Hello everyone, thanks for tuning into today's second video. So we've already had a look at the spring today. We've got the first long range model roundup for the spring. The video is here on the homepage, just need to scroll down a little bit and it's underneath the link ads. We've got 7 long range models together, a bit short on models for this one, but we've got 7 long range models together. And seeing just for the first time, really, what the consensus is with these long-range models for spring. That video is going to be placed on the spring updates page later on today, and there'll be a little written report that goes with that as well. So if you haven't watched it yet, it will be placed on the spring updates page later on today. And then next month, of course, the long-range stuff all gets back to Sunday, as it would normally be. And we'll have more models and some analogues to add into the mix as well next month. So check that out if you haven't done so yet. This video is going to be having a look at the weather for the next week to 10 days. This takes us just into the second week of January. And I did a video yesterday explaining about the severe cold that's pushing down into Scandinavia and northeastern parts of Europe next week. We're going to be on the periphery of that cold, but we've got to watch out for it. You're going to see in this video why we've got to watch out for it, what the potential from this cold could be, because we've had a very extremely cold run show up this morning from the GFS model, a 6 o'clock run. Now, it is an outlier. It almost certainly won't come off, as the model is predicting, as severe as it's predicting. But because we've got this cold pool getting into Northern Europe, we have got to be watching out for what it's doing. So I'll talk you through all the charts in a moment. I'm going to use 2 GFS runs today. You will see that 6 o'clock run, but I don't want you thinking that going to pan out exactly like you're going to see with that run. So I'm also going to use the midnight run, the run that preceded the 6 o'clock run as well. And that's a more sensible sort of scenario for what could happen. I'll talk you through everything in a second. Before I get on with that, just say about the ads. There's links to articles on all the pages. If you have a browse through, which is to click through the links, you're going to help us pay for our website. Thanks very much for doing that. Later on, we might do a third video going through the GFS ensembles. That will be this evening, if I've got time to get that in. So let's just start off with the 500 millibar height anomaly flow charts for the next week to 10 days. As I say, this is taking us up to around the 9th of January. We've got the ECMWF here on the top, and the GFS, which we'll have a look at in a moment, is on the bottom. 500 millibars, 80,000 feet, is an area in the atmosphere, high pressure, low pressure, being driven by a jet stream running above. Red extrapolates to high pressure, blue to low pressure. So this area of blue just here, that's our cold pool. That's the cold trough. They're going to be sinking down into Western Russia, Scandinavia, and northeastern parts of Europe. There's going to be some bitterly cold air entrenched within this trough, bringing really cold, severely cold and wintry conditions to northeastern parts of Europe. Now, for us to get into that cold air, what's got to happen is this area of above average heights that we have out to the west, that essentially has got to go north. That's high pressure through the mid-Atlantic, through the first week of January. What we've got to do is take that north and centre it somewhere around here. If we do that, it will allow this cold air from northeastern Europe to push into Western Europe, and that would engulf most of northern Western Europe into a big freeze. That's just not quite right to do that, but it would be cold anyway. We would be bringing down the air from a northerly direction around that ridge. The air would be coming in, something like that, but the really severely cold air is over there in northeastern parts of Europe. The GFS is even closer, and this is again based on the midnight run of GFS. I say the 6 o'clock run does pull it off, and I will show you those charts for the 6 o'clock run of the GFS in a second. But this, based on the midnight run, again has high pressure out to the west. Then we've got this really cold trough covering much of Scandinavia, northeastern Europe, and actually centred around western parts of Russia just there. Again, severely cold air is entrenched within that, and to get it into the west, we've got to move this ridge northwards and northeastwards somewhere there. And if we do that, if we get the ridge going up to that sort of area, we will pull that cold air out of northeastern Europe and Scandinavia and push it into the west. It's very close to doing it, that, and I say the 6 o'clock run of the GFS, which I'll show you in a second, does get there. If you have a look at the GFS temperature and precipitation ensembles next 2 weeks, just starting off with where we are right now, that's where we are in terms of the upper temperatures, anyway, the upper air temperatures. We are significantly milder than average, up at 850 millibars, but down on the surface, because it's winter, I explained it yesterday, we're radiating the heat out space very quickly, so actually it's very cold across England and Wales with frost and fog going on at the moment. Now, over the next couple of days, we're going to stir up the atmosphere, we'll freshen the breeze, we'll entrench more cloud from the Atlantic. So, over the next couple of days, we are actually going to realise that mild potential. It's going to be turning milder the next couple of days down in the south. It's already mild up in the north. Now, you'll notice this plunge in temperature taking place over the new year. This is January the 1st, just there. That's a cold front moving southwards, and that's introducing Arctic air. So we do get a little bit of a colder snap coming through over the new year, and that could entail a bit of snow as well. There is a suggestion that this cold front and these precipitation spikes are associated with that cold front. There's a suggestion that that might stall on New Year's Day in the south, with the cold air undercutting from the north. That might turn on the back edge of that cold front some rain to snow. I don't think it'll amount to too much, but there might be a dusting over higher ground down towards the south. And then beyond that, into next week, we have a lot of uncertainty. It looks like we turn it a bit milder early next week, so sort of Tuesday, Wednesday. And then after that, we're really getting into the realm of, do we push that severely cold air from northeastern Europe our way? The trend of the model is certainly colder than average. So most members of the GFS ensembles are going beneath average through the second half of the first week of January, and then on into the second week of January, which is this period just here. The trend line is clearly, which is the white line, trend line is clearly under the 30-year temperature average. There are some members of the GFS ensemble that are going for severely cold temperatures as well. And you'll notice this green line just here. That actually, I don't often mention that one when we look at these charts, but that green line is actually the GFS operational run. This ensemble is based on the 6 o'clock run of the GFS, so that is a ensemble representation of what the 6 o'clock run of the GFS is doing this morning. I'm going to show you charts in a second. Also, you'll notice there's precipitation spikes through this period, starting towards the end of the first week of January and going into the second week of January. So not only does it look cold through this week with temperatures below average, it also looks unsettled. So that does bring in the prospect of some snow. Even if we don't turn things severely cold, it is very unlikely that we will turn things severely cold. I think we are shaping up for quite a coldish opening to January, to be honest. I think there will be some wintry conditions coming through. These are the ECMWF ensembles for De Bilt. That's in Holland, just over the other side of the North Sea. Again, it's the same idea as with the GFS ensembles. You'll notice that the general thrust of this is to turn things colder into this part of the chart. So just to tell you where everything is, this is New Year's Day just here. So this would be Sunday the 8th of January just there. So if you like, this period from here to here is like the first week of January, where for De Bilt it's not looking overly cold. It's looking a little bit colder than average, I would have thought, but it's not looking overly cold. But it's going to a second week of January, which is this period just here. That's when the model is clearly trending cold, and there are some very, very bitterly cold ensemble members within the ECMWF ensembles as well. So the second week of January might be, or the end of the first week into the second week of January, might be when we have the possibility of pushing that very cold air that's over Scandinavia and northeastern Europe our way. There's also an increase in snow spikes, which is this box just here. Lots of dry weather coming up for the next week or so, but into the second half of the graph, you'll notice quite a lot of snow spikes appearing there for De Bilt in Holland. Temperature anomalies for the next week looking like this. Generally a little bit colder than average for much of the UK. Actually, Scotland slightly milder than average. That's because the next couple of days will be fairly mild there, and then it turns colder over the New Year weekend. But for most western parts of Europe, coming out a bit colder than average. Still milder than average for Scandinavia and northeastern Europe. Expect these to be trending much colder over the next week or so. The precipitation anomaly for the coming week, more or less drier than average, but not quite as dry as it has been. Especially in the far north of Scotland and down south of England. Again, most central-west parts of Europe come out colder than average. Now, this is the midnight run of the GFS. So this is starting on Monday when we've got this northerly wind coming down across the country. So it will be cold then. There is a chance of some wintry showers in the north, snow showers in the north. And I say for the south, there might be a little bit of a rain to snow situation late on New Year's Day into the early part of Bank Holiday Monday, 2nd of January. Beyond that, high pressure topples through the country on Tuesday, so that's dry and cold and frosty really at that point. That high pressure is still around, probably producing quite a bit of frost on Wednesday, although the north and west is starting to turn a bit milder at that point. And then Thursday the 5th, so a week away, we begin to bring up a milder southwesterly flow. So as I say, it does turn a bit milder through the middle part of next week. That doesn't last very long though. We get this area of low pressure developing just here around Iceland on Thursday, and then on Friday that's moving in towards Norway, turning winds back into north. Again, notice pressure is rising out to west of the country, but wind beginning to turn into the north, bringing cold northerlies back across the country. And then through into the weekend of 7th, 8th of January, we have the wind coming in from the north again, so that could be producing snow showers in the north, the east, or dry weather in the west. And then that high pressure just sort of sits around the country up to day 10. And beyond day 10, so this takes us to Monday the 9th of January. That high pressure is sitting around, got severely cold air in the northeast of Europe. What happens is that we have a go at getting that high pressure up towards Scandinavia. This is Tuesday the 10th of January, so into the second week of the month. We're trying to get that high pressure up to Scandinavia. Severely cold air is sinking down into eastern parts of Europe. There it is. There is that very extensive cold pull through Scandinavia and much of eastern northern Europe as well. Doesn't quite get to us on the midnight run of the GFS. The high pressure doesn't get up to Scandinavia enough to properly get the winds into the east. It is cold, don't get me wrong, there will be some wintry potential there through the latter part of next week into the second week of January, but the real severe cold remains over across the northern and eastern parts of Europe. So that's like the sensible way forward. In a moment, I'll just show you the ECMWF next. In a moment, I'll show you the 6 o'clock run of the GFS. But this is the ECMWF, and again, for Monday, we've got this northerly wind coming down across the country, bringing snow showers with it. The high pressure then sits just to the southwest, so slightly milder air coming around the top of that high pressure. Again, very deep, extensive and severe cold here for much of northern and northeastern parts of Europe. And then as we go through into the end of next week, we push the winds back into the north again. So after a milder interlude midweek next week, it does turn cold again. The winds go back into the north, definitely bringing snow showers with them. And this is how we finish up on day 10 with high pressure out to the west, this deep trough and entrenched very cold air across Scandinavia and northeastern Europe. And again, we are on the periphery of that. So there's the very extensive and severe cold pull covering most of Scandinavia, northeastern Europe. We're on the edges of it with this area of high pressure just here. Where that will go beyond that, you can't really say. It's possible the high pressure will go north. We have got a bit of an Arctic high nosing in there over Svalbard. So what we would have to do is get this high pressure up to there and form a large block to the north of Scandinavia, somewhere up here, and then that would turn winds into the east and push that severely cold air our way. As it is, we finish on day 10, so we can't say whether that would happen or not. But we know from the ECMWF ensembles, there are ensemble members that are probably going for that option. So those are like the sensible scenarios through the course of next week. And they do look quite cold. We get a milder interlude midweek, then we go cold again with northerly winds at the end of next week into that weekend of the 7th and the 8th of January. But I do want to show you the 6 o'clock run of the GFS, because this is potentially what could happen if we was able to bring that severe cold our way. So again, we're starting off on Monday, 2nd of January, for wind in from the north, bringing those snow showers into the north and the east. Go through to the middle of next week, excuse me, high pressure out to the southwest, bringing slightly milder air over the top of that high pressure. Nothing too dramatic happening then. Thursday and Friday, we take that high pressure up towards Greenland and bring low pressure down across, excuse me, again, bring low pressure down across the country. So that is bringing those northerly winds down across the country later next week. That could be quite snowy with that low pressure in the North Sea, by the way. That will certainly be bringing snow showers to the north and the east of the country. Through to weekend of 7th, 8th of January, look where that high pressure is going. It's going much further north than we've seen so far. So it's setting up around Iceland, which is allowing the winds to go in to the northeast. We know we've already got this severe pool of cold air to the northeast of Europe, and you can guess what's going to happen as we go beyond that. We're going to start to move that severe cold pool our way. So there is all of the severely cold air that's sitting up to the northeast. Even at this point, we're cold enough for snow, but it gets even colder as pressure builds to the north and edges in towards Scandinavia. The wind is going easterly, that's allowing that cold pool to start drifting our way, and there it comes. We've got the -10 isotherm through the country, bringing -15 isotherm in towards the North Sea. That's very cold air, bitterly cold air. There will be snow coming in from the east with that. And then it gets really very severe, actually. On the 10th of January, we get this area of low pressure developing around eastern Scotland. It's a polar low, and that just sinks down across the country. That would bring heavy snow and blizzards. The country would grind to a halt if that came off. Upper air temperatures are still very, very cold, and into the 11th of January, that polar low is still sitting there across the country. Again, look how much blocking we've got to the north, from Greenland over there to Scandinavia there, and that's what's allowing this cold air to push in from northeastern parts of Europe. Again, upper air temperatures severely cold there through that 10th, 11th of January period, and then it stays cold through to the end of the run. These are the maximum temperatures that the model is predicting with this scenario. On the 12th of January, the temperature is not predicted by the model to rise above -4 or -5 Celsius. Germany has temperatures of around, maximum temperatures of around -10 to -13 degrees maximum, and the minimums on the night of the 12th to the 13th of January, again severely cold. We're going down to minus double digits, -12, -13 widely across the UK. Germany going down way below that to -20 in the east and southeast of Germany. I think it's going down to around -25 degrees. That is an extraordinarily cold and severe scenario that the GFS has come up with this morning, the 6 o'clock run of the GFS. And please don't think it's likely to come off like that. I wanted to include the charts because you can see why we've got to keep an eye on this cold pool, why we do get a little bit concerned when we have such a deep cold pool coming into northeastern parts of Europe and Scandinavia. But it's very, very unlikely that will come off like that. I would suggest that the midnight runs of the GFS and the ECMWF models are far more likely, which contains the worst of the cold weather across northeastern parts of Europe and doesn't get it back into the west. Nevertheless, even those options are still cold, and there is snow potential in with those more sensible options. So you can see what we're talking about here. We're talking about either sort of sensible cold or really going to an extreme level of cold, such as we see on the 6 o'clock run. I think we are going to have quite a coldish start to January. I'm certainly expecting that, with some wintry potential. We might go severe, but always in the UK, severe cold is very unlikely. And those kind of scenarios really do occur only very, very rarely. So I'm certainly not expecting that we'll see the 6 o'clock run of the GFS model verified, but if we did, we would certainly know about it through that second week of January. Right, been quite a long one again today because there's so much to talk about at the moment. Hope you found it interesting and sort of explained kind of things we're looking at. If I've got time later on, I'll go through the GFS ensembles this evening to see what they're all showing, the different options as we're going through the first week and into the second week of January. But that's it for now, and thanks for watching.